Sami did what she wanted when she wanted. Her family had long given up trying to rein her in, exhausted by her antics that bordered on absurdity. She was a storm in human form, tearing through their lives with reckless abandon. But Sami didn't care. In her mind, everyone deserved a wild phase where the rules simply did not apply. She would vanish for weeks, lost in a blur of parties, only to return home with the force of a wrecking ball. Her arrivals were never quiet. She made sure the entire household felt her presence. Her brother's video game controller, dipped in honey, rendered unusable. Her sisters, chased around the house with a buzzing pair of clippers, laughing as she threatened to shave them bald. Her father, robbed of his favorite TV shows when she smashed the power outlet with a hammer. Her mother, locked out of the only bathroom just when she desperately needed to pee. Sami was chaos incarnate, and she thrived in it. Then one day, she got married. It happened as randomly as everything else in her life. She met a man at the grocery store, fell in love at first sight, and proposed to him before they even reached the checkout line. He worked there as a cashier. But in Sami's world, minor details like financial stability were irrelevant. She demanded he rent a 2-bedroom apartment in the most expensive district of the city, and he, enamored by her unshakable confidence, agreed. He had no savings, no way to afford it, so he stole his grandmother's life savings from under her carpet, just to make Sami happy. Sami, of course, had no real attachment to him. She barely knew his name. She was chasing the thrill of spontaneity, and to her surprise, she lasted an entire month before growing bored. In her mind, this was equivalent to a decade of commitment. When the inevitable end arrived, she made sure to leave her mark. She soaked all of his clothes in cow dung, tossed his childhood photo album into a pressure cooker, and, as a final farewell, slapped his mother across the face with a dirty sock. Then she was off, back to the only people who could tolerate her madness, her family. But when she arrived home, the house was empty. Assuming they had just stepped out, she decided to rest, conserving her energy for the chaos she would unleash upon their return. Before drifting to sleep, she sent her mother a text. "I've been kidnapped by criminals." She chuckled to herself, already imagining the flood of missed calls and frantic messages she'd wake up to. She woke up the next morning to silence. No missed calls, no frantic texts, nothing. Fury erupted inside her. Was her mother ignoring her? The thought was unacceptable. She stormed down to the basement and smashed the water tank, intending to flood the house. Then she stepped outside, filming herself in front of the home, threatening to set it on fire if her family didn't return immediately. She posted the video to the family group chat. Then she waited. For hours, then days. Clutching a metal pipe, she sat outside the house, seething with growing rage. What Sami didn't know was that her family had moved the moment she got married. They had left the country entirely, prioritizing their own peace over their endless battles with her. They had no plans of returning. The realization set in slowly. Sami, abandoned, impossible. She refused to accept it. Anger boiling over, she stood and marched into the neighborhood, metal pipe in hand. House by house, she began smashing windows. With each shattered pane, she screamed, "You forced me to do this," before moving on to the next house. The rampage lasted 15 minutes before the police arrived, tackling her to the ground. Initially, they planned to let her off with a warning. But then, Sami did what Sami always did. She escalated. She pinched an officer in the groin, spat in the judge's face during her hearing, and ensured that her punishment was as severe as her actions. Sami was sentenced to 7 years in prison. No parole, no escape. For the first time in her life, there were rules she could not break, and she had no one left to torment but herself.